22. 2. 1-10. Mount 2. 13-80 Moses was called out of Egypt with Jehovah's firstborn, the nation of Israel, Moses being the nation's leader. Jesus was called out of Egypt as God's firstborn son. X4. 22, 23. Ho 11. 1. Mount 2. 15, 19-21 both fasted for 40 days in wilderness places. X34. 28. Mount 4. 1, 2 both came in the name of Jehovah, Jesus' name itself meaning Jehovah is salvation. X3. 13-16. Mount 1. 21. Joe 5. 43 Jesus, like Moses, declared the name of Jehovah. 32. 3. Joe 17. 6, 26 both were exceptional in meekness and humility. New 12. 3. Mount 11. 28-30 both is the most convincing credentials to show that they were sent by God. Astounding miracles of many sorts, Jesus Christ going farther than Moses by raising dead persons to life. X14. 21-31. PS 78. 12-54. Mount 11. 5. Mr. 5. 38-43. Lu 7. 11-15, 18-23. Moses was mediator of the law covenant between God and the nation of Israel. Jesus was mediator of the new covenant between God and the holy nation, the spiritual Israel of God. 1 Pe 2. 9. G 6. 16. X 19. 3-9. Lu 22. 20. Heb 8. 6. 9. 15 both served as judges, lawgivers, and leaders. X 18. 13. 32. 34. Dar 9. 25. Mal 4. 4. Mount 23. 10. Joe 5. 22, 23. 13. 34. 15. 10 Moses was entrusted with and proved faithfully to his stewardship in the house of God, that is, the nation, or congregation, of Israel. Jesus showed faithfulness over God's house that he as God's son constructed, namely, the nation, or congregation, of spiritual Israel. New 12. 7. Heb 3. 2-6 and even in death there was a parallel. God disposed of the bodies of both Moses and Jesus. 34. 5, 6. Act 2. 31. Jude 9. Toward the end of Moses' 40-year sojourn in the wilderness, while he was shepherding his father-in-law's flock, God's angel made a miraculous manifestation to him in the O textoi acute miritra longo, most holy 441 mosquito heb. QE rats. Any of the great variety of two-winged insects having a round head and long, slender, five-jointed legs. Female mosquitoes are equipped with a strong proboscis that enables them to pierce the skin of man and animals, in order to suck their blood. The Hebrew word rendered mosquito NW appears as a noun only at Jeremiah 46. 20, where it is used to represent the Babylonians and in Nebuchadnezzar, the enemy to the north that would come against Egypt, the pretty heifer. Most high. Topmost is to place, or position. The Hebrew word el middle.yon, used with reference to Jehovah as Most High, is also applied to other persons or things. The Messianic King, the greater David, as above the other earthly kings PS 89. 20, 27, the place above the nations promised to Israel to 26. 18, 19, the topmost basket GE 40. 17, the upper gate to Chi 15. 35, the upper pool to Chi 18. 17, the upper courtyard J 36. 10, the uppermost story as 41. 7, the uppermost dining rooms as 42. 5, upper Beth Horon Jos 16. 5, and the upper source of the waters of Gihon 2 ch 32. 30. These uses illustrate that L-yon denotes position rather than power. When applied to Jehovah, Most High emphasizes his supreme position above all others. PS 83. 18. The title first appears at Genesis 14. 18-20 with El God, where Melchizedek is called priest of the Most High God and, in that capacity, blesses Abraham as well as the Most High God. Most High is used in combination with the divine name Jehovah GE 14. 22. PS 7. 17 and with the plural of excellence Him God PS 78. 56, and it also appears alone. The 32. 8. PS 9. 2. Isra 14. 14. The plural Aramaic form Yo name occurs at Daniel 7. 18, 22, 25, 27, where it may be translated Supreme One and W, the plural being the plural of excellence, majesty. The Aramaic form in the singular number, Il Most High, is used at Daniel 7. 25. The Greek word Stos Most High, as applying to Jehovah, is employed mainly by Luke, in his Gospel twice in Gabriel's announcement to Mary about the birth of Jesus and in the Acts. 1. 32, 35, 76. 6. 35. 8. 28. Acts 7. 48. 16. 17. The other occurrences are at Mark 5. 7 and Hebrews 7. 1. Most Holy. The innermost room of the tabernacle and, later, of the temple. Also called the Holy of Holies. Acts 26. 33, FTN. 1 Chi 6. 16th. This compartment in the tabernacle was apparently cubical, each of its three dimensions being 10 cubits 4.5 meters, 14.6 feet. The dimensions of the Most Holy in the temple built by Solomon were twice those of the tabernacle, so that it was 8 times as large in volume. Acts 26. 15, 16, 18, 22, 23. 1 Chi 6. 16, 17, 20. 2 Ch 3. 8. The high priest entered the Most Holy only on the annual Day of Atonement. At no time could any other person go beyond the curtain that hung between this room and the holy place. 16. 2 In the Most Holy the high priest was surrounded by the colorful embroidered cherubs on the tabernacle's inner covering and on the curtain. Acts 26. 1, 31, 33 In Solomon's temple the walls and ceiling were of cedar wood covered with gold, and cherubs, palm tree figures, gourd-shaped ornaments, and blossoms were engraved on the walls. 1 Chi 6. 16-18, 29. 2 Ch 3. 7, 8. The scriptures outline 3 entries of the high priest into the Most Holy on Atonement Day. First with the golden censer of perfumed incense, fired by coals from off the altar. A second time with the blood of the bull, the sin offering for the priestly tribe. And finally with the blood of the goat, the sin offering for the people. 16. 11-15. Hob 9. 6, 7, 25 He sprinkled the blood of the animals on the ground before the golden ark of the covenant, on the cover of which were golden cherubs and above which cover Jehovah's presence was symbolized by a cloud. Acts 25. 17-22. 16. 2, 14, 15 That cloud evidently shone as a bright light, being the sole light for this compartment of the tabernacle. O textoi acute muritra longo. Moth 442 confirmed that the atonement sacrifices offered by the Jewish high priest were now no longer of value, and there was no need for the services of the Levitical priesthood anymore. Mount 27. 51. 23. 38. Hob 9. 1-15. Symbolic use. The most holy compartment in the tent of meeting, or the tabernacle, contained the Ark of the Covenant. The cover of that ark surmounted by 2 golden cherubs represented God's throne. Therefore the Most Holy was used, figuratively, to represent the dwelling place of Jehovah God, heaven itself. The inspired letter to the Hebrews gives us this interpretation of matters when it compares the entry of Israel's high priest into the most holy one day a year, on the Day of Atonement, with the entry of the great high priest Jesus Christ into what the most holy symbolized, once for all time with his sacrifice for sins. It explains. Into the second compartment the most holy the high priest alone enters once a year, not without blood, which he offers for himself and for the sins of ignorance of the people. This very tent is an illustration for the appointed time that is now here. However, when Christ came as a high priest of the good things that have come to pass, through the greater and more perfect tent not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, he entered, no, not with the blood of goats and of young bulls, but with his own blood, once for all time into the holy place, and obtained an everlasting deliverance for us. Therefore it was necessary that the typical representations of the things in the heavens should be cleansed by these means, blood of animal sacrifices sprinkled on them, but the heavenly things themselves with sacrifices that are better than such sacrifices. For Christ entered, not into a holy place made with hands, which is a copy of the reality, but into heaven itself, now to appear before the person of God for us. Job 9. 7-12, 23, 24. So Jesus Christ as the great high priest according to the manner of Melchizedek fulfilled what Israel's high priest of the line of Aaron could do only typically when entering into the earthly most holy. Job 9. 24. The spiritual brothers of Christ, joint heirs with him, are strengthened by the words of the same letter to the Hebrews, that we who have fled to the refuge may have strong encouragement to lay hold on the hope set before us. This hope we have as an anchor for the soul, both sure and firm, and it enters in within the curtain, wherefore an heir has entered in our behalf, Jesus, who has become a high priest according to the manner of Melchizedek forever. Job 6. 18-20. Again, Paul encouraged these Christians to feel fully free and confident to approach God and to hold fast to their hope without wavering by these further words. Therefore, brothers, since we have boldness for the way of entry into the holy place by the blood of Jesus, which he inaugurated for us as a new and living way through the curtain, that is, his flesh, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us approach with true hearts in the full assurance of faith, having had our hearts sprinkled from a wicked conscience and our bodies bathed with clean water. Let us hold fast the public declaration of our hope without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. Heb 10. 19-23. Moth Heb. Ash. SAS clothes moth. Gr. Says. A four-winged insect resembling a butterfly, but differing from the latter in that its feelers usually are feathery and not terminated by distinct knobs. When at rest the moth's wings are not held erect, as is often the case with butterflies. Instead, they are either folded back flat over the insect's body or held flat at its sides. Also, moths are generally nocturnal. The insect referred to in Scripture is evidently the webbing clothes moth Lineola bisalila, particularly in its destructive larval stage. Job 13. 28. PS 39. 11. Issa 50. 9. 51. 8. Ho 5. 12. Mount 6. 19, 20. O textoi acute muritra longo, Mount, Mountain 443 Issa would come. G 18. 18. 22. 18. X 19. 5, 6 For one to be childless was considered to be one of the greatest of misfortunes. G 30. 1. Under the law covenant a woman was religiously unclean after the birth of a male child for 40 days 7 plus 33, and after the birth of a female child for double this amount of time, or 80 days 14 plus 66. La 12. 2-5 For the 7 and the 14 days respectively she was unclean to all persons, including her husband, but for the 33 and 66 days respectively she was unclean only as to holy things and things connected with religious services at the sanctuary. Hebrew mothers breastfed their children till they were 3 years old and sometimes up until the age of 5 years or longer, in the belief that the longer the child was suckled the stronger it would grow. See weaning. Where the mother died or could not provide a sufficient supply of milk, the nurse was employed. Hence, Babes and sucklings of the Bible could include those old enough to be weaned, old enough to have some knowledge to be able to praise Jehovah and to be trained at the sanctuary. Mount 21. 15, 16. Once a 1. 23, 24. 2. 11. There was a special closeness between the mother and the children, because the mother took immediate care of the children until the time after weaning, when the father would begin to guide the child's education more personally. The mother's position in the household was one of recognized importance. She was to be respected even in her very old age. Acts 20. 12. 21. 15, 17. PR 23. 22. The 5. 16. 21. 18-21. 27. 16. Of course, her position was always secondary to that of her husband, whom she was to respect and obey. As a child, Jesus kept in subjection to his adoptive father Joseph and his mother Mary. Luke 2. 51, 52. Where the father had more than one wife, the sons would distinguish their real mother from their father's other wives by using the designation mother. Full brothers were distinguished from half-brothers by the expression sons of my mother. JG 8. 19. GE 43. 29. The mother was required to transmit the instructions and commands of the father to the children and see that these were carried out. PR 1. 8. 6. 20. 31. When the mother was the manager of her household under her husband's headship. Bearing and rearing children in the right way kept her busy and protected her to great extent from becoming a gossiper or a meddler in other people's affairs. As long as she continued in the faith, this proved to be a very great safeguard for her. 1-5. 9-14. 2. 15. A good mother had to prepare food and make cloth as well as articles of clothing for her children and other members of the household, and her husband as well as her sons could well commend and praise such a woman before others. PR 31. 15, 19, 21, 28. Figurative use. The word mother is applied at Judges 5. 7 in the sense of a woman who assists and cares for others. Paul referred to his gentleness toward those to whom he brought God's truth, his spiritual children, as that of a nursing mother. 1th 7. See gentleness. Because of the close spiritual relationship, Christian women are likened to mothers and sisters of their fellow Christians and are to be treated with the same respect and chastity. Mr. 3. 35. 1-5. 1. 2 Christian wives who follow the good example of Abraham's wife Sarah termed her children. 1p3. 6. Since man's body was made out of dust from the ground, the earth may figuratively be likened to his mother. GE 2. 7. Job 1. 21 A city is depicted as a mother, the inhabitants of which are considered her children. In the case of Jerusalem, the city as the seat of government stood for the entire nation, and the people of Israel as individuals were considered her children. 4. 25, 26. As 23. 4, 25. Compare PS 137. 8, 9. Also, a large city was considered as a mother to her surrounding dependent towns, or, literally translated, her daughters. O textoi acute miritra longo, mountain 444 mountain like the 562 m 1844 feet Mount Tabor. JG 4. 6. The Hebrew word Har may refer to individual mountains, including Mount Sinai, Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal, Mount Gilboa, and Mount Zion. X 19. 11. 11. 29. 1-31. 8. Issa 4. 5. It may also refer to mountain ranges like that of Ararat G8. 4 and to entire elevated regions like the mountainous regions of Ephraim Jos 17. 15, Naphtali Jos 20. 7, and Gilead 3. 12, as well as to those regions anciently occupied by the Amorites and Ammonites. De 1. 7, 20. 2. 37. The Aramaic word Tadatu. 35 designates a mountain, as does the Greek word Oros. See articles on individual mountains by name. Mountains of Palestine. Palestine on the whole is a rather mountainous land, though it possesses few impressive peaks. West of the Jordan River there are the mountains of Judah in the south, including Mount Moriah, Mount Zion, and the Mount of Olives. 2ch3. 1. PS 48. 2. Mr. 13. 3. The central section of this range extends any to Mount Gilboa 1-31. 1 and contains the mountains of Ephraim and Samaria, with the historic peaks of Gerizim and Dibal. Jos 19. 50. Der 11. 29. To the NNW the Mount Carmel range juts out into the Mediterranean Sea. J 46. 18. The valley of Jezreel Esdrella divides the primary range from a second range farther, and this latter range includes Mount Tabor JG 4. 6. In the coastal chain of Lebanon Mountains. JG 3. 3. 1 Chi 5. 6. East of the Rift Valley of the plateaus of Edom and Moab 2ch 20. 10. And the high cliffs along the eastern side of the Dead Sea, including Mount Nebo from which Moses viewed the Promised Land, as well as the Tablil and Dia of the Jordan Valley, which averages about 600 meters, 2,000 feet in elevation. To 3. 10. 34. 1-3. Jos 13. 8, 9. 20. 8. This mountainous region continues northward to meet the Lebanon range, with its majestic Mount Hermon, the highest peak in the entire Palestinian region. K 4. 8. Value of mountains. Mountains influence the climate and rainfall. They collect the water and channel it down to the rivers or hold it in underground reservoirs that feed springs in the valleys below. 8. 7. Their slopes have supported trees 2ch2. 16, 18, vineyards, and various crops. PS 72. 16. PR 27. 25. ISA 7. 23-25. J 31. 5. Their higher elevations have served as threshing floors. ISA 17. 13. Mountains have accorded natural protection from invading armies. PS 125. 2. They have offered refuge and storage places in time of danger. GE 19. 17, 30. JG 6. 2. Mount 24. 16. Compare E6. 15. And shelter for wildlife. PS 50. 10, 11. 104. 18. ISA 18. 6. They have provided sites for cities. Mount 5. 14. Mining operations have yielded use floors. 8. 9. Also, valuable building stones have been quarried from mountains. 1 Chi 5. 15-17. Jehovah's possession. All mountains belong to Jehovah God by reason of his being their former. PS 95. 4. Am 4. 13. However, the words mountain of Jehovah or of God often apply in a special way to mountains where Jehovah revealed his presence. These include Mount Sinai or Horeb X 3. 1. New 10. 33. And the mountain associated with Jehovah's sanctuary. PS 24. 3. Figurative and prophetic use. Sometimes the term mountain applies to the soil, vegetation, and trees on the mountain's surface. Compare PS 83. 14. Of Jehovah, the psalmist says, he touches the mountains, and they smoke. PS 104. 32. 144. 5, 6. This may point to the fact that lightning can set mountain forests on fire, thereby causing a mountain to smoke. The effects of a severe storm appear to be described when the Bible speaks of mountains melting or flowing away. JG 5. 5. PS 97. 5 heavy rains produce streams and raging torrents that wash the soil away, as if melting it. Similarly, the expression of Jehovah's anger against the nations was foretold to result in such slaughter that the blood of the slain would melt the mountains, that is, wash the soil away. Islo textoi acute miritra longo, mountain 445 ring meant depicts him as being enveloped with light, more majestic than the mountains of prey. PS 76. For the mountains of prey may represent aggressive kingdoms. Compare Na2. 11-13. Regarding Jehovah, David said, "You have made my mountain to stand in strength," probably meaning that Jehovah had exalted David's kingdom and firmly established it. PS 30. 7. Compare 2-5. 12. The fact that mountains may represent kingdoms aids one in understanding the significance of what is described at Revelation 8. 8 is something like a great mountain burning with fire. Its resemblance to a burning mountain would suggest that it is associated with a form of rulership having a destructive nature like fire. The prophecy of Daniel indicated that God's kingdom, after crushing the other kingdoms, would become a large mountain and fill the whole earth. Da2. 34, 35, 44, 45. This meant that it would extend its blessed rule over the entire earth. Wrote the psalmist, "Let the mountains carry peace to the people, also the hills, through righteousness." PS 72. 3. In harmony with this psalm, the blessings that are spoken of in connection with God's mountain, such as Jehovah's banquet for all the peoples, would be experienced on earth. Isra 25. 6. See also Isra 11. 9. 65. 25. Associated with worship. Mount Zion became a holy mountain when David brought the sacred ark to the tent that he had pitched there. 2-6. 12, 17. As the ark was associated with Jehovah's presence, and David had evidently acted at divine direction. To 12. 5. This meant that Jehovah had chosen Mount Zion as his place of dwelling. With reference to this choosing, David wrote, "The mountainous region of Bashan is a mountain of God, that is, created by God. The mountainous region of Bashan is a mountain of peaks. Why do you, O you mountains of peaks, keep watching enviously the mountain that God has desired for himself to dwell in? Even Jehovah himself will reside there forever." Jehovah himself has come from Sinai, where he first revealed his presence to the entire nation of Israel, into the holy place. PS 68. 15-17. The mountainous region of Bashan may be identified with Mount Hor and Jebel Idrus, and this mountain range may be meant by the words the mountain of God and the mountain of peaks. Although Mount Hor towers far above Mount Zion, Jehovah chose the less conspicuous location for his place of dwelling. After the temple was built on Mount Moriah, the term Zion came to include the temple site, and therefore Zion remained God's holy mountain. Isra 8. 18. 18. 7. 24. 23. Joe 3. 17. Since Jehovah's temple was located at Jerusalem, the city itself was also called his holy mountain. Isra 66. 20. Da 9. 16. 20. It may be with reference to facing the mountains of Jerusalem when praying that the psalmist said, "I shall raise my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help is from Jehovah." PS 121. 1, 2. Compare PS 3. 4. 1 Chi 8. 30, 44, 45. Da 6. 10. The prophecy of Isaiah 2. 2, 3 and that of Micah 4. 1, 2 pointed to the time when the mountain of the house of Jehovah would become firmly established above the top of the mountains and be lifted up above the hills, with people of many nations streaming to it. The fact that the mountain of the house of Jehovah was to be above mountains and hills would point to the exalted position of true worship, for mountains and hills in ancient times served as sites for idolatrous worship and for sanctuaries of false gods. The 12. 2. J 3. 6. As 18. 6, 11, 15. Ho 4. 13. In a typical fulfillment, between 29 and 70 CE during the final part of the days of the Jewish system of things, Jehovah's worship was exalted above the lofty elevation that pagan nations gave to their false gods. The King, Jesus Christ, made a breakthrough in elevating the true worship, and he was followed, first by a remnant of the nation of Israel and then by O textoi acute miritra longo. Mountain of meeting 446 mountains were not found. This suggests that not even things as lofty as mountains would escape the outpouring of God's anger. Compare Jah 4. 23-26. The mountains rejoice and praise Jehovah. When Jehovah turns his favorable attention to his people, this is a good effect upon the land. Cultivated and cared for, mountain slopes cease to have an unkept appearance, as if mourning in a state of desolation or plague. Therefore, figuratively, the mountains cry out joyfully and their beauty and productivity praise Jehovah. PS 98. 8. 148. 7-9. Compare ISO 44. 23. 49. 13. 55. 12, 13. S36. 1-12. Mountain of meeting. An expression appearing at Isaiah 14. 13, where the king of Babylon is depicted as saying in his heart, "Above the stars of God I shall lift up my throne, and I shall sit down upon the mountain of meeting, in the remotest parts of the north." Some scholars hold that this mountain of meeting was some distant northerly eminence that the Babylonians regarded as the dwelling place of their gods. However, instead of being prophetic of an actual statement that the king of Babylon would make, the words of Isaiah 14. 13 reflect what his ambition and attitude would be. Compare ISO 47. 10. They are part of a proverbial utterance to be lifted up against the king of Babylon by restored Israelites. ISO 14. 1-4. It therefore logically follows that the mountain of meeting must be identified in the light of Scripture and not on the basis of what may have been the pagan religious conception held by Babylon's king. Certainly the king of Babylon would have no desire to lift up his throne above the stars of a god whom he worshipped. Also, Isaiah 14. 14 clearly shows that the reference is, not to one of the Babylonian gods, but to the Most High. Hence the mountain of meeting must be associated with the Most High God. In Isaiah's time there was only one mountain, Mount Zion, which name came to include the temple site on Mount Moriah, where God representatively met with his people. Compare Isla 8. 18. 18. 7. 24. 23. Job 3. 17. It could appropriately be termed the mountain of meeting because at the sanctuary there all mature Israelite males were to appear before the face of Jehovah 3 times each year. Acts 23. 17. Psalm 48. 1, 2 further confirms this identification by giving Mount Zion a northerly location, harmonizing with the placement of the mountain of meeting in the remotest parts of the north. Mount of ruination. Identified in the article Olives, Mount of mourning. Mourning among Oriental peoples was customarily accompanied by much outward display of grief, and this is reflected in the biblical accounts of periods of mourning. One entire book of the Bible, Lamentations, is an expression of mourning over the fate of Jerusalem. Causes of mourning. Persons mourn to express repentance. NE 9. 1, 2. John 3. 5-9, or because of the imminence of calamity as 4. 3. Jah 6. 26. Am 5. 16, 17 or a disastrous condition already prevailing. Jah 1. 5-14. The most common cause of mourning, undoubtedly, was death. The death of a member of the immediate family set in motion a period of mourning. GE 23. 2. 27. 41. 37. 33-35, while the death of a parent or of an only son are set out as occasions of the deepest grief. PS 35. 14. Am 8. 10. Zek 12. 10. The death of a national leader occasioned periods of mourning lasting from 7 to 30 days. New 20. 29. To 34. 8. 1 to 31. 8, 12, 13. The Egyptians continued to shed tears over the death of Joseph's father Jacob for 70 days, with an additional 7-day period of mourning rites in Canaan. GE 50. 3-11. Ways of expressing sorrow. Mourning was given expression vocally and by weeping, as well as by disfigurement of the physical appearance and by fasting or otherwise abstaining from normal practices. Wailing or loud and bitter crying might accompany the weeping too. So 1. 11, 12. As for 1. The chest was beaten. Isa 32. O textui acute muritra longo. Mourning 447. Emotion, and subsequent rejoicing in Jehovah are present. Occasionally, professional mourners were employed at funerals, and musicians played mournful tunes. J 9. 17, 18. Mount 9. 23. These were imitated by little children playing in the marketplaces in the time of Jesus' earthly ministry. Mount 11. 16, 17. The pipe or flute was the preferred instrument for lamentation. J 48. 36. Mount 9. 23. See Josephus Jewish War, 3, 437 9, 5. After a burial the women customarily visited the grave, to weep and mourn. Joe 11. 31. A funeral meal seems to have been served sometime during the mourning period and, in some instances, appears to have been made into a special feast. Ho 9. 4. J 16. 5, 7. Prohibitions involving mourning. On occasion God's people as a body, or as individuals, were instructed not to mourn over the death of certain ones, such as condemned wrongdoers. La 10. 1, 2, 6. The prophet Ezekiel was commanded to adopt none of the signs of mourning for his deceased wife, thereby serving as a portent for the Israelites with him in Babylon that they would be so stunned that they would not mourn the divine execution of judgment on Jerusalem for its unfaithfulness. As 24. 15-24. Jeremiah received somewhat similar instructions. J 16. 5-13. Certain mourning practices were forbidden under the Mosaic law, including the inflicting of cuts in the flesh or causing of baldness on your foreheads. 19. 28. 14. 1. And the misuse of tithes in connection with the dead. 26. 12-14. For certain members of their immediate families the priests could mourn openly, but the high priest was restricted from doing so. 21. 1-6, 10-12. A time to mourn. Ecclesiastes 3. 1, 4 states that there is a time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to wail and a time to skip about. In view of all mankind's dying condition, the heart of the wise ones is shown to be in the house of mourning rather than in the banquet house. EC 7. 2, 4. Compare PR 14. 13. Thus, the wise person makes use of his opportunity to express sympathy and give comfort, instead of ignoring such an occasion in favor of seeking pleasure. This helps him to keep in mind his own mortal state and to keep his heart in the right attitude toward his Creator. Valid motives for mourning are set forth in the Scriptures. In addition to the death of loved ones, GE 42. 38. 44. 31. Detestable and God-dishonoring practices of false religion are a cause for sighing and groaning. As 9. 4. Compare 1 Cor 5. 2. And grief is rightly expressed because of one's own errors. PS 38. 4, 6-10. Jehovah urges those who have drawn away from him. Come back to me with all your hearts, and with fasting and with weeping and with wailing. And rip apart your hearts, and not your garments. Job 2. 12, 13. Compare Jas 4. 8, 9. Elsewhere, also, stress is laid, not on the external expressions of grief or mourning, but on the inner stirrings and pain of heart, marking genuine sadness. PS 31. 9, 10. PR 14. 10. 15. 13. Mr. 14. 72. Joe 16. 6. Even Jehovah speaks of himself as being heard at his heart. GE 6. 6. Compare Issa 63. 9. God's Holy Spirit can also be grieved. F4. 30. Since that Spirit works in God's servants toward the producing of fruits of righteousness. G5. 22-24. Those who fail to appreciate this divine provision, who resist its working, and who go contrary to its leading are, in effect, grieving it. Compare Issa 63. 10. 1th 19. A balanced view of mourning. In the time of Jesus' earthly ministry, mourning was still frequently carried on by the people with much outward expression and accompanying noise and confusion. Mr. 5. 38, 39. Though Jesus groaned within himself and wept on a number of occasions. Joe 11. 33-35, 38. Lu 19. 41. Mr. 14. 33, 34. Heb 5. 7. There is no record of his employing the other more ostentatious expressions already described. Compare Lu 23. 27, 28. His disciples likewise express grief and mourning. Mount 9. O textoi acute miritra longo. Mouth 448. Child's death. David got up, washed, rubbed himself with oil, changed clothes, prayed to Jehovah, and then requested food and began to eat. In explaining his acts to his surprised attendants, he stated, "Now that he has died, why is it I am fasting? Am I able to bring him back again? I am going to him, but, as for him, he will not return to me." 2 Sa 12. 16, 19-23. Later, however, he needed help from straight-speaking Joab to pull out of his state of deep grief over the death of his son Absalom. 2 Sa 18. 33. 19. 1-8. Though all creation keeps on groaning, the sufferings of the Christian are minor compared with the glorious hope ahead. Row 8. 18-22. 1 P1. 3-7. And the promise of the resurrection enables him not to sorrow just as the rest also do who have no hope. 1Th4. 13, 14. Mourning and fasting without obedience to Jehovah's word are of no benefit. Zech 7. 2-7. However, sadness in a godly way makes for repentance to salvation. Such sadness is the result of the person seeing a wrongdoing as a sin against God. It moves him to seek God's forgiveness and to turn around from his wrong course. But the sadness of the world produces death. Although a person may be sad that his wrong was exposed and that this has meant loss to him, he has no desire to gain God's forgiveness. 2 Co 7. 10, 11. For example, Esau's tears shed selfishly in hope of regaining his forfeited birthright had no effect on Isaac or on God. Job 12. 16, 17. Figurative and prophetic use. Figuratively, even the land is represented as mourning because of devastations caused by invading armies or by plague. J4. 27, 28. Jo 1. 10-12. Contrast PS 96. 11-13. In its desolation, the land would grow up in weeds and develop a neglected, uncared for appearance, like that of a person who has not attended to his face, hair, or clothing while in mourning. Similarly, land devastated by plague upon the crops presents a mournful sight. The sign of the Son of Man and Christ's revelation are to cause all the tribes of the earth to beat themselves in lamentation, or in grief. Mount 24. 30. Re 1. 7. Upon symbolic Babylon the great plagues, death, mourning, and famine are foretold to come in one day, causing those who have benefited from her to weep and mourn. Re 18. 2, 7-11, 17-19. By contrast, the New Jerusalem brings in conditions upon earth in which tears, death, mourning, outcry, and pain pass away for all time. Re 21. 2-4. Mouth. An organ designed by God to receive and prepare food for the stomach, also, in humans, for speaking. All speech should result in praise to him. PS 34. 1. 51. 15. 71. 8. 145. 21 The psalmist declared that everything that has breath will praise Jehovah. Therefore humans must use their mouths to do this if they desire to live. The Apostle Paul explains that belief in God and his Son, even believing with the heart, is not enough. It has to be accompanied by public declaration in order to bring salvation. PS 150. 6. Row 10. 10. In harmony with his purpose and his right and power as creator, Jehovah can put the proper words into the mouth of his servant. In the case of his prophets, he did so miraculously, by inspiration. Acts 4. 11, 12, 15. J 1. 9 In one instance he caused even a dumb animal, an ass, to speak. New 22. 28, 30. 2 PE 2. 15, 16 Today God's servants can have his words in their mouths, not by inspiration, but from his inspired written word, which equips them completely for every good work. 2 T 3. 16, 17 They no longer have to wait for Christ to come to provide the good news, nor do they need to go to some other source for what they preach. They have it right before them, ready for them to speak, as they are told. The word is near you, in your own mouth and in your own heart. Row 10. 6-9. To 30. 11-14. Can bring life or death. It follows that the proper use of the mouth is vital, and so Jehovah declares it to be. His word says, "The mouth of the righteous o textoi acute miritra longo." Mule 449 Since the power of the mouth is great for good or bad, when Jehovah guides the mouth great results are attained. He made Isaiah's mouth like a sharp sword and the words in Jeremiah's mouth a fire. Jehovah backed up their prophetic words by his power, and they came true. Isra 49. 2. J 5. 14 On the other hand, it is dangerous to listen to anything that comes out of the mouth of a person known to be an apostate. It can bring a person to ruin. PR 11. 9. Figurative use. God represents himself symbolically as having a mouth. None of his pronouncements are uttered to no purpose, in vain. They will be fulfilled to the smallest detail. Isra 55. 10, 11 Therefore, those who desire life must live by every word proceeding from his mouth. 8. 3. Mount 4. For when on earth his Son Jesus Christ conformed his whole life to his Father's words, and now has universal authority granted him. As king appointed by Jehovah, he will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. Isra 11. For the vision of Revelation shows him smiting the nations with a long sword proceeding out of his mouth. Re 19. 15, 21 This figure of speech evidently represents the authority he will exercise in command of all Jehovah's heavenly armies in ordering and supervising the warfare that results in the execution of God's enemies. Mouth is often used synonymously for speech or the power of speech, as can be seen from some of the instances cited above. The rule governing evidence in a case under the Mosaic law, and also followed in the Christian congregation, is that a person may be found guilty only at the mouth, that is, on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. 17. 6. Mount 18. 16. Compare to Co 13. 1. A few other examples of similar usage are found at Job 32. 5. Psalms 10. 7. 55. 21. 78. 36. Ezekiel 24. 27. 29. 21. Luke 21. 15. FTN. Romans 15. 6. In addition, mouth may have reference to the opening of something, such as of a well GE 29. 2. A bag GE 43. 12. 44. 1, 2. A cave Jos 10. 22. Or to an opening in the earth New 16. 32, as well as to the ability of the earth to absorb liquids poured onto it GE 4. 11. Sheol, mankind's common grave, is spoken of as having a wide mouth, so as to receive many dead. Issa 5. 14. The palate. The palate is the roof of the mouth, which separates the mouth from the nasal cavities. It has a soft part that forms a curtain between the mouth and the pharynx. In the scriptures, palate is, in some cases, used synonymously with mouth. P8 7 08 1 FTN. Both Job and Elihu make a comparative use of the word when they liken the palate's ability to discriminate taste to man's judgment as to what is right and wise. Job 12 11 34 3. That the palate has a function in tasting is not erroneous, as is sometimes claimed. This can be seen by observing the part played by the palate in swallowing. Food is pressed by the tongue against the palate and spread out as it moves back into the pharynx, which is a cone-shaped tube leading toward the stomach and connecting also with the nasal passages. This brings about better diffusion of the aroma of the food into the nasal passages, which greatly contributes to what is commonly called taste. Mosari going forth. 1. The descendant of Judah and son of Caleb by his concubine Fr. 1 ch. 2. 46. 2. A Benjamite and descendant of King Saul. He was the son of Zimri and father of Binea. 1 ch. 8. 33-37. 9. 42, 43. Mosa drained pressed. Squeezed out. A Benjamite city. Jos 18. 21, 26. The ancient site is considered to be at or near Galunium of Aseret Zion, a village about 7 kilometers 4.5 MWNW of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Jar handles stamped with the name Mosa have been found at Jericho and Tel Nazbeh. Muleheb. Pered. Pyramidal. Mule. The hybrid offspring of a Hias and a mare. The mule's body resembles that of the horse, but its short, thick head, long ears, short mane, small feet, and tail Otextoe acute Muritra longo. Mapim 450 Isaiah, indicated that mules would be one of the means of transport for bringing his scattered people to Jerusalem. Issa 66. 20. It is therefore of note that in fulfillment of prophecy those returning from Babylonian exile brought with them 245 mules in addition to other beasts of burden. As 2. 66. NE 7. 68. Humans are counseled not to make themselves persons without understanding, like a horse or a mule whose spiritiness must be curbed by means of a bridle or a halter. PS 32. 9. Mapim. One of the sons of Benjamin Ge 46. 21. Evidently identical with Shephapim Nu 26. 39, Shephapim 1 ch. 8. 5, and Shapim 1 ch. 7. 12. Murder. The original language words variously rendered kill, murder, and slay refer to the taking of a life, the context or other scriptures determining whether the deliberate and unauthorized or unlawful taking of another person's life is involved. For example, in the command, you must not murder x 20. 13. The Hebrew word for murder Zach here clearly refers to deliberate and unlawful killing. But at Numbers 35. 27 the same term denotes an act that an avenger of blood was authorized to carry out. Therefore, the command, you must not murder, has to be understood within the framework of the entire Mosaic law, which authorized the taking of human life under certain circumstances, as in the execution of criminals. Early history. Almost from the beginning of human history, murder has been known. Through his disobedience, the first man Adam passed sin and death to his offspring, thus, in effect, proving himself to be a murderer. Row 5. 12. 6. 23 It was the devil who deliberately contributed to this development by inducing Adam's wife Eve to sin, thus himself becoming a manslayer, a murderer, at the beginning of his course as a slanderer of God. Ge 3. 13. Jo 8. 44. Less than 130 years afterward, the first violent murder, a fratricide, occurred. Cain, Adam's firstborn son, motivated by envious hatred, murdered his righteous brother Abel. Ge 4. 1-8, 25. 5. 3 For this act Cain was cursed in banishment to become a wanderer and a fugitive in the earth. Ge 4. 11, 12. Not until after the flood of Noah's day did God authorize humans to administer capital punishment for murder. GE 9. 6. Under the law. Centuries later the Mosaic law was given to the Israelites, and it included extensive legislation regarding the taking of human life. It differentiated between deliberate and accidental slaying. Factors considered as weighing against a person claiming to be an accidental manslayer were: if he had been a former hatter of the slain person to 19. 11, 12. Compare Joes 20. 5, 2 had lain in wait for the victim new 35. 20, 21, or 3 had used an object or implement capable of inflicting a mortal wound new 35. 16-18. Even slaves, if killed while being beaten by their masters, were to be avenged. X 21. 20. Whereas the death penalty was prescribed for deliberate murderers and a ransom was ruled out in their case, unintentional manslayers could preserve their lives by availing themselves of the safety accorded them in the cities of refuge. X 21. 12, 13. New 35. 30, 31. Joes 20. 2, 3. See cities of refuge. Certain deliberate acts that indirectly caused or could have resulted in the death of another person were considered tantamount to deliberate murder. For example, the owner of a goring bull who disregarded previous warnings to keep the animal under guard could be put to death if his bull killed someone. In some cases, however, a ransom could be accepted in place of the life of the owner. Undoubtedly the judges would take circumstances into consideration in such a case. X 21. 29, 30. Also, an individual scheming to have another person killed by presenting false testimony was himself to be put to death. The 19. 18-21. The law permitted self-defense, but restricted an individual's right to fight for his property. Blood guilt camo text oe acute muritra longo. Music 451. Murder with wrong attitudes such as an individual's continuing wrathful with his brother, speaking abusively to him, or wrongly judging and condemning him as a despicable fool. Mount 5. 21, 22. Such hatred may lead to actual murder. It appears that the words of James 5. 6, you have condemned, you have murdered the righteous one, may be understood in this light. Wicked rich persons who showed hatred for genuine disciples of God's Son and took oppressive action against them did in some instances actually murder these Christians. As treatment accorded to his brothers is considered by Christ Jesus to be meted out to him, these persons had also figuratively murdered him, and James evidently had that in mind. Compare Just 2. 1-11. Mount 25. 40, 45. Act 3. 14, 15. Although followers of Christ might be persecuted and even murdered for righteousness' sake, they were not to be found suffering for having committed murder or other crimes. Mount 10. 16, 17, 28. 1 Pe 4. 12-16. Re 21. 8. 22. 15. Mushi, grandson of Levi and son of Merari. X 6. 16, 19. Mushi became father to 3 sons and founded a family called the Mushites. 1 Ch 23. 23. New 26. 58. Mushites possibly, of belonging to Moses. A Levite family that descended from Mushi the son of Merari. New 3. 17, 20, 33. 26. 58. Music. One of the gifts of God by which man can render praise and thanksgiving to his Creator as well as give expression to his emotions, his sorrows and joys. Especially has singing been prominent in the worship of Jehovah God, but instrumental music, too, has played a vital role. It has served not only to accompany the vocalists, but also to complement their singing. So it is not surprising that references to both vocal and instrumental music abound in the Bible from beginning to end, in association with true worship and otherwise. GE 4. 21. 31. 27. 1 Ch 25. 1. Re 18. 22. History. The Bible's first reference to music is before the flood, in the 7th generation following Adam. Jubal proved to be the founder of all those who handled the harp and the pipe. This may describe the invention of the first musical instruments, or perhaps even the establishment of some kind of musical profession. GE 4. 21. In patriarchal times music